Mikki, first question has to go to you. Why has Plandemic hit a spike we've never seen before in history?
Well, I think the first one hit a spike because it was an eyewitness that was behind the curtain that was able to testify about the incredible criminal history of our medical mafia at the hands of people like Anthony Fauci. And so when you have a bunch of other doctors who suspect it or who have indirectly experienced it or have learned it through research, it's different. But when you have somebody that was in the laboratory that can name names, that can show documents, and has a history with all of these men, all the men that David will be mentioning soon here, Ralph Barrick and all of them, all the people that are behind all of this masquerade. I think that was what made it such a big threat. And then, you know, it was allowing Judy Mikovits to tell her story in her own way and letting that story get out to the world. I think that really set and primed the stage for us to release part two. And so, you know, we had the world waiting for that because part one received over 1 billion views at this point, which I think is really endemic of the trust that we've lost in each other. You know, when someone comes out that's kind and compassionate and clear, right away we want to suspect that there must be some other motive behind that person. And I think that's really because we have been led astray by all the people that we're supposed to trust. And so now we're at this place of which is also, I think, a very positive thing. We're at this place of being very careful with our trust, which leads us then to I believe, will ultimately lead us back to learning to trust ourselves.
Well, there's a sentence that I think we need to make sure that everyone realizes did not come from me, it did not come from Mikki, it did not come from any of the people who are on the outside observing the crime. This is the sentence written by the criminals themselves. And it's only one sentence. I'm going to read it to you in their words, because I think it's always good to make sure that you give them full credit for what they are perpetrating. Quote, because of a concern for reemergence or a deliberate release of SARS coronavirus, vaccine development was initiated. Now, just sit with that sentence and then recognize that it was written on or before March the 28th, 2019. That sentence entered into a public publication on March the 28th, 2019, which is the reason why I said it was probably written before then. But when you actually use a phrase that was only used one other significant time in US history, and that was in the events leading up to September the 27th and 28th, 2001, which, as all of us remember, that wonderful September 2001 act of terror that affected every one of our lives, the release of anthrax, that it entered the postal system and actually took the lives of some individuals. That's the only other time we have a mass use of the sentence, a deliberate release of a pathogen. Now, that sentence comes from patent applications from Moderna, the organization that NIAID, Anthony Fauci, and DARPA funded, the organization that was pushed into the front-runner position despite the fact that they did not have any proprietary advantage to be in that front-runner position. That sentence was put into 4 of their patent applications. March 28, 2019. You cannot have the sentence, a deliberate release of SARS coronavirus. You cannot have the sentence recited then in September of 2019 by Anthony Fauci at the NIAID, when Anthony Fauci stated exactly the same sentence, a deliberate release of a respiratory pathogen for the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board World at Risk statement. You cannot have those sentences written and then tell me that on December 17th or 18th, a bat and a pangolin walk into a Chinese bar and ask to mix drinks. That is not possible. This was premeditated, and the premeditation goes back to 1999, when the United States government and the Chinese government decided that they could take advantage of the pathogenicity of what used to be a relatively innocent coronavirus. And they decided to make it a weapon to be used to bring down humanity and all that humanity stands for. This was an 18-year in the making crime. And the criminals involved knew what they were doing. It was premeditated, and they have financially received benefit from 2003 forward, and they continue to receive financial benefit to this day. We have to call it what it is, Sasha. This is premeditated genocide based on an affluent set of individuals who have decided the fate of humanity without considering what humanity is in the first place.
And bearing in mind, of course, that there is a very rich recorded evidenced, forensically evidenced pathology of the Gateses of this world and their connections to Planned Parenthood. In Fauci's case, Vatican complex, Mother Teresa, some very insidious little threads there. So we're talking about all of these streaming back to the parent corporation. You said 18 years ago, this crime was conceived. Is that because 9/11 failed or because 9/11 succeeded?
Well, remember that we have had, since certainly the 1960s, a commitment on the part of the elected establishment to serve propaganda rather than facts to the American people. Now, this isn't a new problem, and Mikki is more expert in this because he's done so much work on control of the narrative. But if we think about what's been going on, we have enculturated a population that has now taken to this illusion that that which is said on mainstream media, that which is published on headlines, must be true regardless of the data and the evidence that's staring you in the face. That the narrative is more important than the fact. This problem is not a new human problem, but the scale of its effect is a new problem. Because when the collective consciousness of billions of people are all resonating on the same lie frequency, whether it is planes into towers, whether it is pathogens into the respiratory system, if we do not allow facts to inform our observation of events, and we cede that wisdom to the controlled narrative of a few, we have fundamentally robbed ourselves of that intellect that has in fact given us the ability to thrive on this planet. So this is all part of a massive, massive effort to make sure that that which meets the eye and then that which is lived experience is subjugated to a narrative that actually sits at full dissonance to observation.
Beautiful. Harvest of humanity and sacrifice of innocence is not something that is done to us. It's something which is permissioned by us. That's what
Correct.
I'm hearing you.
Correct.
Okay.